I was devastated that my PSA 8 Johnny Bauer was trimmed. I mean, that was a great card. I waited a while to find a copy I liked. I was devastated. I mean, listen, not the end of the world. It's a card, but I didn't want it anymore, and I've never replaced it.
But were you devastated because it lost value in your mind and it would not hold the same value as it originally would have if it hadn't been trimmed? Or were you devastated because something that you thought was authentically, it was the way it was supposed to be, it was not altered in any way, shape, or form, it was just a true representation of whatever that card was throughout time, it has lived through the time it's been around, and it was just real and authentic in that sense? Which one of those would you say you felt?
It wasn't the value. It was, for me, it was the integrity of my card in my collection. Like, man, I mean, you're in this hobby. If anyone who's been in the hobby like I have, and not like you have to be in the hobby for 42 years as I have been, but if you've been in the hobby, immersed in it, it's your lifestyle passionately for, I don't care how long, whatever, however many months to decades, it doesn't even matter. You want your cards to have integrity, and that's something that I want. Now, I make an exception for the Queen Elizabeth because I don't really have it as it's like a side PC. It's not a main PC for me, but I just don't, it's just like, again, a card that I spent $800 on, the Bauer, I think I paid $838 for. It's not a ton of money, but I just didn't want that in my collection. I want a tamper-free card. So, it's funny because your question, Dennis, that you asked, I have different answers depending on the card, right? Now, this is the only known trimmed card I have in my collection. Thankfully, I don't want any more. I'm okay with one. That's enough. And it serves now as an example for me to show people and to show this is what a trim. If it is in fact trimmed, I don't know that it's in fact trimmed. I don't even know if PWCC, it says PWCC believes I'm looking at the email. PWCC believes has evidence of alteration. They believe it. I don't know for sure.
This conversation, like, literally will give you a headache, like, because it's believed. You would even know. Now we're going off of this like basis that card is trimmed, but we don't really know. And it's perceived that certain people are trimming cards. It's perceived that certain grading companies are worse at detecting it. Everything is sort of in this vacuum of perception, which is why people care about whether the card is trimmed or not. I think I'd venture to guess in the comment section, you guys let me know what side do you think this, or what side of the room do you think this lies on? I think the reason people are concerned about trimmed cards is because, unlike a piece of art, and I forget who on the comments answered that question, because there was a question like, well, art's restored, it's not a big deal. Well, art's like one piece. The artist creates a lot of times just one piece, and that piece has to be kept. And cards are kind of produced. There's lots of them, and some of them, there's way too many of them. So getting that perfect copy, there's something about that gives it value because it's so unique in that condition. Is it because the perception now is that card is not as valuable, not as sought after, because Jeremy's not going to want that Bauer card because the integrity still needs to be intact for that card? Or is it only because of the integrity? And that's the only reason why that people don't like the trim. It's like, it's the moral high ground of like the sort of the virtue of it, right? Which I believe there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, is it the virtue of it, or is it because now the hobby will look at that card differently? The card feels different to me now because it's not the same card it was when I knew it wasn't trimmed and it was authentic in its state. Which side is it on?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big question, right? I mean,
it is. We can go in circles on this whole discussion, on a lot of different pieces of this topic. But let's go through some more comments, Dennis, if that's all right, as we figure out how you and I are going to be vibing during taking stock. And but fun so far. Thanks to everybody for showing up. And if you are not yet subscribed to both YouTube channels, Sports Card Dad, Sports Cards Live, please take a moment, do that. Greatly appreciated. Again, a Mangini comment here. I think people are missing the bigger picture. If PSA can't tell trimmed cards this often, then why the hell are people spending thousands with them? And again, it comes down to how often, what are we allowing for? What margin of error is the hobby willing to allow for with all third-party grading companies? And again, I don't know if the answer, I would like it to be zero. We would like it to be a perfect system, but I just don't think that is reasonable. He goes on to say here, if you were the one who bought that mantle for 5.2 million, I think he's talking about the Rob Go PSA 9, you might think once is too often. 100%. Of course, in that case, once is way too often. Now, PSA does have their guarantee, but I think it maxes out at $500,000 lifetime per person. So that's not going to cover several high-end cards. How about this comment here, Dennis? BF Golf says, 75 years from now, if the grading companies that exist today no longer exist, will the grades assigned today become irrelevant? I mean, the true collectible is what's inside the slab. I want to thank BF Golf for this comment, Dennis, because first of all, I've never done this thought. It's never even dawned on me to go through this potential thought experiment. So what about like brand? PSA is so successful because of their brand. If that brand disappears 50 years from now, as BF Golf is saying, what does it even matter? Is it irrelevant?
I mean, it depends on the cards you're collecting. Like, for me, I have a handful of cards that are, I know they're out of 10, or they're hand numbered Ken Griffey Jr. Chicago cards from 99, and it's the hand numbered version. It's a BGS 9, but I mean, it could be raw, and I know it's authentic, and that makes no difference to me. Yeah, you're spending money on these cards to get them out of collectors' hands, but I think once you start focusing your collection and you love collecting cards, you love the cards, you love what the story behind the card is, right? What it took to get it, how revered the card is in that player collector space. I think if you take the grades away and you take them all out of their slabs, there was a part of me that kind of wanted to just break them all out anyway, but I'm like, man, but I spent this to get this in a 10. I spent this to get this in a 10. And, these cards, the grade kind of matters because, there's a few more of them out there. So you'd like to have the perfect specimen of that card, right? But I guess if that all goes away at one time or another, that particular card was reviewed as a 10, and then maybe would you grade it with the company that's around 75 years from now? I mean, I don't feel like we're going to be here where our kids want to do that with those cards. If we still have them, I don't know. That kind of comes back to the cards you're collecting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think for some people that'll be the case. I think for other people, it's black and white.